Today I will talk about the corruption in public sector in Malaysia. We all know that corruption are some of the bad habits, but do you know what is it the corruption? The corruption is a dishonest behavior by those in position of powers such as manager or government officials. Corruption can include giving or accepting bribes or inappropriate gift, double dealing, under the table, transaction, manipulating election, diverting fund, laundering money, and also defrauding the investor. The public sector is usually comprised of organizations that are owned and operating by the government and exist to provide services for its citizens. Similar to the volunteer sector, organizations in the public sector do not seek to generate profit. When corruption occurs within an organization, unflattering media coverage typically follows, which may result in customers losing trust in the money business practice and product. The comprehensive public relation campaign is often required to limit reputation damage and restore trust. This requires valuable resources such as time and money, which may result in other critical areas of the organization being deprived. As a result, insufficient debt can lead to financial losses can occur.
I will present about symptoms of corruption in the Malaysia. To see the impact of corruption on the country, gross domestic product has been taken into account to assess the rate of economic growth in Malaysia. Looking at the data released by the Department of Statistics Malaysia, in 2020, the GDP has experienced a decline due to outbreak of COVID-19. Malaysia recorded a decline of 5.0% compared to 2019. Gross domestic product is very important to assess a country is experiencing attractive economic growth of Y besar. That is not denying the impact of the country economic downturn due to the spread of the pandemic COVID-19, which was increasingly alarming at the time. However, Malaysia can be said to be slow in the announcing the movement control order due to issue of the change government. The controversy attracted because the resignation of Prime Minister by Tun Dr. Mahathir. The controversy has caused the Alliance Party to discuss with Yang di-Pertuan to choose the next Prime Minister. The second one is misappropriation of government fund. Sources of the Social Security Association has issued a response statement by the MACC regarding 30 cases of misappropriation of which subsidy program PSU funds. Apart from that, the Malaysia Ethics Commission has also suspected that RM49.5 million has been misappropriated after detaining officer and the former Director General of the Malaysia External Intelligence Organisation. The last one is corruption scandal. One of the biggest corruption scandal in Malaysia is the One Malaysia Development Berhad, 1MDB case. 1MDB was launched in 2009 by the former Prime Minister of Malaysia, Datuk Seri Najib Tun Razak. This project was implemented as a long-term project, starting with the case of borrowing RM5.0 billion from banks without board approval. According to Dr. Mahathir, RM2.6 billion is in Datuk Seri Najib Tun Razak account. The reason given by him was the result of contribution from the Prince and Kings of Saudi Arabia. This is unreasonable because it is illegal for a Prime Minister to have that much money in his account. Another issue involved Mara Incorporated Sdn Bhd. The Malaysia Anti-Corruption Commission has arrested Datuk and also former chairman of Mara by accepting bribe worth RM33.45 million in the purchase of property in Melbourne. This matter received widespread coverage after the Barisan Nasional government was overthrown.
One of the impacts of corruption is that it leaves a negative impact on investment. Corruption lowers capital productivity and this will affect the investor decision-making process. This is because investors only want to gain profit and they will only invest their money into somewhere safe. When a country becomes corrupt, this would decrease the probability for them to make an investment because they know it will bring a major loss for their own money and assets. As for the country, they could not gain any funds or aid to improve the country, such as building new infrastructures and improving the citizens' life. All of this cannot be gained if the country is implementing the corruption in its business process. Next, it will affect the inequality and income distribution. When corruption not only has influenced economic development of efficiency, but it also has a fundamental economic influence. Other studies propose that such research should also incorporate the indices of social welfare and income distribution. For this point, corruption would specifically decrease economic growth, skewed tax systems that favor the rich and well-connected, lower levels and effectiveness of social expenditures, and uneven access to education and public services that will all contribute to rising income inequality. Last one, it will affect the overall governance and institutional government. Corruption is also likely to have a long-term impact for the regulatory policies and the efficiency of the state level, as it opens more incentives for politicians and public officials to create more regulations, restrictions, and administrative process. This would bring more opportunities to extract small payments from citizens and companies, as the practice of delaying proceedings until facilitating payments have been made extends across the public sector. This is more likely to intensify rent-seeking behavior and foster inefficiency of the government.
Alright, so I'll be sharing on what causes people to do corruption. There has actually been a research written in the Journal of Engineering, Design and Technology in 2020. The causes of corruption were then recorded and ranked based on which is the most influential causal variable of corruption. Coming in at number 3, lack of ethical standards seems to be one of the most critical causes. Workers tend to push aside professional behaviors and actions which are regarded as ethical standards in order to focus on more profit. The lack of ethical code of practice can encourage corrupt actions from the workers, hence the poor managerial and monitoring of their underlings. Next, at number 2, is the relationship between parties. Corruption becomes easier when there are accomplices. The management connects with personalized social networks in order to also gain competitive advantage. Some say that high-quality business relationships with stakeholders are important for the success of projects. This is considered wrong because not only are they receiving help, but they are also owed to the party for favors and opportunity. And coming in first place, corruption happens because of personal greed towards money. The more money that is put on the table, the more desire of a person to live easy will conquer them. Especially living in a city like Kuala Lumpur, where the cost of living are ranged from 2,700 ringgit to 6,500 ringgit per month, makes money and greed a powerful forces to which lets people do corruption in order to survive. When large amount of money is presented to a person, their whole behavior and attitude changes and will follow whoever has the goal.
One of the solutions to reduce corruption in Malaysia is to take swift action on corruption scandals. As seen by some of the high-profile cases now being investigated, the Malaysian government is committed to prompt action in the face of corruption crisis. The MACC, Malaysian Anti-Corruption Commission, plays a vital role in constituting an important step towards strengthening the institution. The commitment to anti-corruption expressed in the 5-year national plan allow the reforms to yield results quickly. The implementation of a more transparent system and procedures, as well as through monitoring and evaluation strategy, is addressing key areas such as political finance, public procurement, and political influence. Next is the amendment of the Section 17A of the MACC Act. Another significant modification was the 2018 revision of the MACC Act, which included, among other things, a new section on corporate corruption responsibility. The new section not only established a new statutory corporate liability offence of corruption by a commercial organisation under Malaysian law, but also deems any director, officer, controller, or partner manager of a commercial organisation to be personally liable for the same offence if the organisation is found liable for an offence. This is an exception when the relevant individual can prove that the violation was committed with or without her permission, and that he or she took all reasonable precautions to avoid the offence from being committed. Lastly is to allow certain limitations to politicians. Normally in Malaysia, politicians are usually appointed to sit for a vital position in the nation. It is done because they have the knowledge and competency to hold that kind of position. However, the opposite happens when politicians turn out to be convicted with many cases of corruption, such as one NDB, that concerns on money laundering from a well-known politician in Malaysia. This kind of case is very famous to the point that people on the other side of the world know this story very well. It is not impossible that other politicians would do the same as well, because when someone have the money and the power they need, they consider themselves as a king and would do anything for the sake of their own interests.
As a conclusion, what we can learn from this topic, we can say that corruption in Malaysia can give a bad impact to the development of the country. Based on the reason, factors and also symptoms, we can learn from this to prevent the corruption that happen in our country.